Today, I'm at Harvard Law School, about to talk with the students here, and my goal is to urge them to set aside the assignments that they have and think about assigning themselves the crafting of a meaningful life. What kind of story do they really want to tell? Something that's really from their hearts as well as from their minds, and something that might actually help the world a bit. But first, I think this law library is missing something. Maybe a little touch of magic. Thank you, everybody. I have to say this law school is so much improved from when I was here. For starters, we never got food before a lecture. I mean, seriously. Now I know why you all have come, but I'm hoping to be your food for thought. Anyway, please disregard everything you just heard in that introduction. I am a fiction author, and so I asked Steve to just make it up. Now, I will tell you there is one thing that's true, though, in that introduction, and that's that I have always loved story. I have always been drawn to the world of story ever since being a kid around a campfire in Colorado. I would love hearing a well-told tale. And I began to have a dream of being a writer someday, thinking about telling my own stories and living in the mountains, and that dream grew and grew. And well, after I went off to Oxford, had a few travels, I came back with a novel I had written somewhere between the Trans-Siberian Railway and working as a roof thatcher in rural Japan. And I brought it back to Oxford and printed it up and sent it off. By the way, this is pre-email, so sending it off means literally sending off a big hulking manuscript in the post office. I sent it off and I thought, okay, I chose 32 publishers and I didn't know which one of them would be the lucky winner of, this great new undiscovered American author, but I thought, the first one in the door, I'll be gracious. So I had high expectations, and I guess you could say that novel had a terrific reception. Of the 32 that I sent out, I scored 32 rejections. It was a complete strikeout. And actually, I have to stop here to say, all of you who have ever experienced rejection, it's not pleasant. It really can hurt. And actually, some of those letters were downright cruel, brutal even. But it's not fair to label them all that way. There was one letter, actually, one that still stands out in my memory. I can actually see it in my mind's eye. One letter from a New York publisher that was really just so personal. It was so warm. It made me feel like I was a real human being with dignity. So I will tell you, this letter, so personal, I can, as I said, I can see it. I'll read it to you in my memory. It said, "Dear Sir / Madam." Now, that wasn't, it got even better. They made it even more personal. They actually circled the word sir, which really touched my heart. And then it went on to say, "Dear Sir / Madam, your work of fiction / nonfiction, circle fiction, does not meet our publishing standards for our spring / fall publication list." Oh, by the way, and in that case, they circled both spring and fall, just to make sure I didn't miss the point. Anyway, so that left me with all kinds of warm fuzzies and a question. What am I going to do next? And so I will tell you, I did what many, many young people have done at that point in life where they just had no clue whatsoever what they could do with their future. I decided to go to law school. This law school. Well, fast forward, after being up here, I joined a private equity and venture capital firm in New York City. I was there for many years, for 7 years, and became president and chief operating officer of the firm. We became a public company. It was very busy, but there was a problem. I would still fight to find time to write. Early in the mornings, I'd get up at 4:30 or 5, and I'd write, sitting there at our kitchen table. I would write in the back of taxis, or even in the back of board meetings or business pitches, whatever. People thought I was taking the most copious notes of anybody, but actually what I was really doing was doing character sketches on them. And I'm trying to imagine, what emerged from that business suit on Saturday nights, things like that. Well, pretty soon this dissonance between the life I was living, and it was a good life. I enjoyed a lot about the business and making companies work and all the rest that there was a lot of creativity of a kind in that, and I enjoyed that, and I loved a lot of my partners and the investors. Well, but this yearning to write was still there, and finally, honestly, it came to a point before a big meeting, a big annual presentation meeting, where I stayed up almost the whole night thinking about it and talking with my wonderful new bride, and came to a decision and walked in, made a very nice financial report to my partners, and then finished by saying, oh yeah, one more thing, I quit. I'm not joining a competitor, I added. I'm actually going to move back to Colorado, where the second half of my childhood was spent, and see if I can maybe write a book somebody might actually want to read. Now, of course, I had no evidence at all I could actually do that, but I really did need to try. You can imagine how wonderful that shock was in the room. It was completely silent, actually, until one of my partners, the head of the firm, came up, and he was shaking. He was so upset. He was sheet white, and he said, Tom, you just cannot do this. You cannot do this. It's crazy. And I said, I really have to. It's actually not so crazy. Believe me, it's something I need to do. He said, but think what you're leaving. And I said, I'm aware, but I need to try this. And then he reached into his pocket, and he pulled out a beat-up business card, and he put it in my hand, and he said, this is my therapist. You have to get in there today. You're liable to do something really, really drastic. Brooklyn Bridge, open windows, whatever. Anyway, so that's the kind of warm and supportive reception I got. That day, when I quit to see if I could write, this month was 24 years ago, and 30 books ago, soon to be 31. And you know what? More good things have happened in that 24 years than I could possibly have guessed, including the contact with readers from all around the world. But there have been bestsellers and international editions, and now a movie in the works at Disney, all this good stuff. But I still get letters that are memorable. And now I guess I should say, instead of the humbling kind of letter like Dear Sir / Madam, I get letters that are maybe humbling in a different kind of way. I'm thinking of one I got recently from a young woman in California who she wrote to say, Dear T.A. Barron, I came and heard you at the public library. You spoke to all of us. Most of my friends think I came because I like your books, which I do, but that's not really why I came. And then she said, the real reason I came is that I have always wanted to write books myself, but I never thought I could do it until now. Now, freeze the frame. At this point, I have this wonderful, goofy, happy look on my face, I'm sure, a very warm feeling that something, I didn't know what it was, but something I must have said, encouraged this young woman to do what was in her heart and sing her own song. And that felt great. That's a big part of what I'm about. So it felt great. Then I made a huge huge mistake. I kept on reading her letter. Remember, she said she always wanted to write books, but never thought she could do it until now. Then she added, because now that I have heard you speak, I know for sure you really don't have to be very smart after all to write novels. I think I know what she meant, but maybe not. Anyway, what I'm really getting at here is this. To be serious for a moment, when people ask me about my career change, they often say, wasn't that scary to do that, to change your life like that? And I say, of course, it's always scary to make a change in your life. It's scary to change jobs or change locations. It's scary to make any kind of change of that order. But the fact is, that wasn't nearly as scary as the idea of growing old and sitting on my doorstep somewhere and being an old man with very little time left and knowing I had a dream that I just didn't have the guts to pursue. That's a really scary thought. Honestly, the idea of trying and failing isn't nearly as frightening as the idea of never trying at all. The truth is, all we have, and I mean all we have, is our time and our souls. So why not make the most of both of those? The question is how. And that's especially difficult to answer, I think, if we have been good at doing assignments that have been given to us our whole lives. I know I was when I was at your age and stage, and I'm sure that all of you are very, very good, adept at doing assignments provided by someone else. But this is the time in life where it's important to give yourself your own assignments. And the way I might suggest going about that are asking yourself two questions. The two questions that I asked myself in that time that really helped me. One is a question that's directed inside, and one is a question that's directed outside to the world. The question inside is, what do I love? What do I honestly really care about? What do I really love? And the question to the outside is, what does the world need? What does the world genuinely need that I can help provide? If you put the answer of those two questions together, what do I love and what does the world need? You are well on the way to having a wonderful, meaningful life. For me, the answer to those two questions comes up with three basic ideas. Ideas that honestly I've built my life around in the decades since. They're the pillars on which my life has been built. One is story. That won't surprise you. One is nature, and one is young people. In the world of story, I have come to think about stories in whatever form, novels, plays, movies, whatever form you take stories. They're a kind of vessel. They're like a boat that can carry us to faraway places, right? But the interesting thing is that stories that are really well told and that have those enduring qualities aren't taking us out of this world as much as they are taking us into a deeper reality of this world we're in. That's because stories are great vehicles for ideas. They carry, it's as if those boats I was describing have in their hold ideas, and they carry those. Ideas like, what difference can one person's life make? Or is there any way we can learn to live sustainably on this beautiful but beleaguered planet of ours? The second pillar is nature. And the truth is, nature really refills my cup like nothing else. I know no other place I can go to feel both very small and very large at the same time. When I'm out under a Colorado night sky and the stars are so bright you almost feel like you have to squint to look up at them. Or in a deep redwood forest in Northern California where I was 2 weeks ago with trees that are majestic and massive and over 2,000 years old. Or standing by the ocean, looking out to sea at that infinite space the ocean provides. Well, in those places, we feel very small, we feel reduced, we feel humbled. And that's, by the way, a good thing. Feeling humbled is a good thing for us human beings. At the same time, though, in all of those places in nature, we get to feel enlarged, enhanced, because we are part of all that. So the grand sweep of time and space in the stars or in a redwood forest or walking along the seashore, that lifts us and makes us feel larger too, because we belong to all that grandeur. The third pillar is you all right here, young people. And I must tell you that no set of people inspire me more than young people. You have that wonderful combination of energy, honesty, idealism, and it really lifts my heart. It renews my hope. That's why I've sponsored that prize named after my mother that turns the spotlight on outstanding young people from all around North America, 25 of them a year, and really just to celebrate them and their accomplishments so that their stories might inspire other young people. So when I look out among all of you, I really do feel a renewed sense of hope and optimism, even with the scale of the problems that we face as a planet and a species. So let me finish by saying something to you I say both as a writer and as a fellow human being. See your life as a story. Yeah, a story of which you are the author. Tell it with courage. Tell it with passion. And just make it the very best story you can. Thank you very much. I am here for you now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. That's always the best part of these sessions, or the questions that come from you on any subject I've talked about or not. Yes?
Thank you again, Mr. Barron. So it seems like you, like many of us, came from a very structured environment, Princeton, Oxford, Harvard. In your creative pursuits, do you think that helped you or hindered you? And if it did hinder you, how did you overcome that? And if it helped you, how?
Excellent question. That's really, the question is, does formal education often hinder us as much as help us? I think it does. It certainly was that way for me. I'll put it this way. The most important thing I learned during the first year at Harvard Business School was how to play the guitar. It's true. And the most important thing I learned during my first year at Harvard Law School was that I was probably not going to make it onto the Supreme Court. And then I started rummaging around in the world around me to figure out, okay, what really am I going to do? And that's when I began to ask, okay, what do I really care about? That process, together with just a dose of your own mortality, I think you really do have to look, not in a morbid way, but look at your life as a time capsule you have a chance to direct. It's energy, it's time energy, and it's your soul's energy, but it's really up to you. If you just take the assignments or the incentives, the carrots that are held out there by XYZ corporations, they may be wonderful folks, but if they don't really meet your inner desires of what you want to do with your life, you have to go deeper. Thanks for asking. Who else has a question? Now, you have a question.
You talked about stories as a vehicle for ideas.
Yeah.
I was interested to know how those relate to each other. Does normally when you write, does the idea come first and you decide that you need to create a story to tell that idea? Do you have characters in your mind already that they just happen to be telling this idea that you've always wanted to get across? Or if it might be a chicken and the egg problem, but I'm just curious about how those things relate to each other.
Where do stories come from is really the question. And I'll give you a top level answer, and then I'm going to give you a deeper level answer. The top level answer is, it's different for every writer, but for me, I know to just get the glacial energy moving forward, even at a slow pace, to write something serious, I need to have three elements. I need to have a character I really care about, a place that's magical enough, interesting enough, diverse enough that I want to go there and really be there. And by the way, to me, places are not just a backdrop for a story, they're really another form of character. They have to have all the complexity and subtlety and contradictions that a human character would have, and sudden storms to boot. And then the third is that idea, a real question about whatever, free will, about how can humanity live with our fellow species in peace, about what real difference does one person's life make, even one lone young person. Questions like that. If I have all three of those, then something starts to happen. In whatever form it takes for you as a writer, or you as a writer, or any of you who work with the imagery and metaphor of words and language, and you're lucky, by the way, it's an exquisite anguish, words. For any of you, it's going to be different for each one of you, but this must apply, I think. And by the way, I think this applies to every creative enterprise. Writing a symphony, designing a beautiful building like this one, crafting a novel, all of those things. You have to somehow engage both halves of your brain. You have to engage the left half, which is connected to your right hand, the part of the brain that is more logical, more rational, more directed in its thinking patterns. You also have to engage the right half of your brain that's connected to the left hand. That's the part of our brain that deals in metaphor. It's the part of the brain that writes poetry. It's the part of the brain that thinks in incomplete sentences, that creates imagery and metaphor that convey a whole lot more than all the detailed prose you can imagine. Another question. We had a question over here. Yes?
So I was wondering, when you transitioned from your life before devoting yourself to writing, what did you find now that you gained or that you use in your writing from your time at the private equity firm or from law school?
That's a great question.
What would you take from that?
The question is, what did I bring from my life before into my life as a writer? That phraseology, by the way, sounds like there was a curtain, and the Wizard of Oz is behind there, and it's really not as amazing as you might expect. But the truth is, everything in life is experience that you can use, and I actually believe that, and this might sound strange coming from somebody who writes fantasy and imaginary realms. I think that the best material, absolutely the best, whatever kind of work you do, is real life. And it's about noticing really, really well what's around you. We tend to think of fantasy as something other, and reality as this, or even fiction as something else, and nonfiction as something different. But I think the truth is more complicated than that. Good fiction, if it's done well, must be true. It's just not true on the factual level. It's true on the emotional level. It's true on the spiritual level. It's true in what it evokes, in the idea level. But it starts with noticing. I mean, really noticing, which begins with your senses. It also begins with getting deeper into the minds and hearts of people around you and imagining what their motivations are, what their contradictions are, what their deepest fears are, what their highest hopes are, their aspirations, their struggles. And so what I'm really saying is, to be a good writer, I think requires being all present and aware as much as you humanly can. And then you have a lot of great material to work with. So even if you're in the New York financial world, I met, believe me, some amazing characters. And if you want to know where some of the trolls or ogres came from in my stories, I could easily point you to a few of them. And by the way, a few elves and wizards too. A couple of giants, several dwarfs. So I think you get the idea. And let me add one last thing. Here's the secret. If you have a job description that means you need to notice life more fully to be part of it, whatever comes of your writing product, you have the great gift of having a job that means you'll be more alive while you're doing it. So whatever you do, notice well, because it gives you a more fully enriched experience every day that you live. It's a great thing. So it'll empower you whatever directions you choose to take. Who else in this room has tried his or her hand at writing? There are at least a few of you writers. Riley, I know you, and back over here. Well, let me just tell you the wisest words ever spoken to me about writing. And I suppose it has to do with life as well. It was by a marvelous writer whose name is Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote a book called A Wrinkle in Time that I bet many of you have read and enjoyed. I certainly have, many times. Madeleine looked me right in the eye over dinner once when I was really struggling with my first novel. She said, "Tom, you realize there are 3 essential rules to writing the perfect novel." I dropped my fork. I literally dropped my fork and bent over the plate of spaghetti and said, "Okay, tell me, please." She said, 3 essential rules. Unfortunately, she continued, nobody knows what they are. So that's all the wisdom I have to impart about writing. Thank you all again for assembling today. And let me just urge you one more time. Do think of your life as a story. Think of it as your personal authorship and tell a great one. I can tell you will. Thank you.